Welcome to the Zen Studies podcast. Thanks to new supporting members of the podcast. Matthias from Egerkingen, Switzerland, Bonnie from Los Angeles, California, and Arthur from Waukesha, Wisconsin. Also, thanks to Philip in Cardiff in the UK for my new podcast music, giving me something to celebrate my 300th episode. So this is the 6th episode in my One Reality, Many Descriptions series, in which I discuss the central Mahayana Buddhist teachings about the nature of what I like to call reality with a capital R. In the first of these episodes, 229, One Reality, Many Descriptions, Part 1, Emptiness, I explained how there is, of course, only one reality, but naturally there are many ways to perceive it and experience it. Because the reality in which we live is boundless and multidimensional, any description of it will naturally be incomplete, like artistic portrayals of a beautiful sunset. But Dharma teachers through the millennia have encouraged us to wake up to reality with a capital R by pointing us toward important aspects of it we may not have yet experienced or only intuited. So far in this series, I have talked about the following teachings. Emptiness, which points to the falseness of the self-nature we project onto all phenomena, including ourselves. Suchness or thusness, which points to the luminous, miraculous quality of all things in and of themselves when we perceive them having awakened to emptiness. Buddha nature, which celebrates the existence of all beings and things without which there would be no awakening. And the two truths of absolute and relative, which points to the way we perceive reality as having two aspects. One, the dimension of time and space and causality and differentiation, and two, the dimensionless dimension of right here, right now, along which there is only a single, boundless, seamless reality that is luminous with suchness. In the future, I will explore the teachings of mind, with a capital M, interdependence, and time being. Again, simply alternative ways of describing a single reality. In this episode, I want to talk about a Mahayana Buddhist teaching I never expected to include in this series, because I never particularly resonated with it. The Trikaya, or three bodies of Buddha. Kaya is the Pali word for body. Recently, however, I personally connected with this teaching and have come to appreciate how it describes the palpable presence of the ineffable despite its ungraspable nature, and the relationship of all phenomena to the ineffable. So let's get started. The evolution of the teaching of Trikaya, or three bodies of Buddha. Before I turn to my current understanding of the Trikaya teaching, I want to give you some background in it. Now bear with me, it may seem like the teaching is based in a fascination with Buddhas as supernatural beings. And to be honest, in some senses it is. However, I think the Trikaya teaching is useful at many levels, and I will get around to the Zen take on it. Even if you don't relate to devotional Buddhism or are wary of metaphysical speculation, you may want to just take note of the evolution of this teaching, because certain questions early Buddhists were asking are deeply significant to our practice, even if they may not appear so at first. So in the centuries after the death of Shakyamuni Buddha, Buddhists were very busy. Many different forms of Buddhism developed, along with many kinds of practices. Some practitioners were scholarly, some ascetic, some focused on the Vinaya or monastic code of conduct. Others were devotional and focused on veneration of relics of the Buddha, which were usually enshrined in circular mounds or buildings called stupas. And I described this development in episode 82, Early Indian Buddhism, Stupas and Devotional Practice. In his article, The Trikaya Doctrine in Buddhism, Ruben Habito explains, quote, "After the passing away of Gautama Buddha, various strands of speculation arose concerning the mode of existence of the Blessed One. A central question underlying these would be what makes a Buddha a Buddha? Or, put in philosophical terms, what is the essence of Buddhahood? It is from these speculations that various views of the Buddha developed, leading to different theories of Buddha Kaya, that is, Buddha body." End quote. Early Buddhists were wondering what to make of the three treasures or jewels or refuges of Buddhism. That's Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Now that the historical Buddha was gone. When he was alive, it was perfectly clear. Just go ask the Buddha for his teaching and guidance. According to the Pali Canon, when the Buddha died, he told his followers to take refuge in the Dhamma and emphasized that his physical presence was no longer necessary. And that's all well and good, but what then would refuge in the Buddha mean? And there seemed to be something beyond the teachings, the Dharma, and the community, the Sangha, that it was important to remember and emphasize. The Princeton Dictionary of Buddhism puts it like this, quote, "Since the physical body of the Buddha was subject to decay and death, was it a suitable object of refuge? In response to this question, it was concluded that the Buddha jewel was in fact a body or group, kaya, of qualities, dharma, such as the traditional 18 unique qualities of a Buddha. This body of qualities, the original meaning of dharmakaya, was sometimes contrasted with the physical body of the Buddha, called the rupakaya, material body, or the vipaka kaya, the fruition body, which was the result of past action. With the development of Mahayana thought, the notion of Dharmakaya evolved into a kind of transcendent principle in which all Buddhas partook. And it is in this sense that the term is translated as truth body." End quote. Later, Buddhists differentiated the Rupakaya into two aspects: Nirmanakaya, the apparitional body, and the Sambhogakaya, or enjoyment body. And the Dharmakaya was seen as the ultimate spiritual body, which all Buddhas had in common: formless, undifferentiated, timeless, non-dual. The Sambhogakaya was thought to be a body that bodhisattvas and Buddhas could manifest due to their lifetimes of spiritual work, and it would be endowed with the special marks of a Buddha and visible only to highly advanced bodhisattvas. And this was the body manifested by Buddhas when they transcended time and space, such as when Shakyamuni supposedly shows up hundreds of years after his death to preach a new Mahayana Sutra. And then the Nirmanakaya was a physical body of a Buddha projected into this world by a Sambhogakaya Buddha out of compassion so they could teach sentient beings. A Tibetan text called the Sutra on the Three Bodies puts it this way, quote, "Son of a noble family, the Dharmakaya of the Tathagata consists in the fact that he has no nature, just like the sky. His Sambhogakaya consists in the fact that he comes forth, just like a cloud. His Nirmanakaya consists in the activity of all the Buddhas, the fact that it soaks everything just like rain." The Trikaya teaching evolves into a description of reality. Theories about the metaphysical existence and activities of superhuman Buddhas may or may not seem relevant to your practice or understanding of Buddhism. It's not my cup of tea, but I should acknowledge that there have been many Buddhists throughout time, and many Buddhists today, who have no problem including a supernatural vision of Buddhahood in their practice. In a lecture on the Trikaya, in fact, Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, a Zen teacher, suggested, quote, "The most important, the vital element for the idea of Buddha was the superhuman element. If Buddha was just a historical person, or one of the great sages, then Buddhism could not have survived for so long." End quote. For those of us who prefer more down-to-earth teachings, it's important to know that over time, in many forms of Buddhism, the Trikaya teaching became less focused on the deification of Buddhas. In other words, the teaching wasn't about the existence and activities of discrete entities in the universe who are separate from you and me. Instead, the Trikaya became a way to describe aspects of reality with a capital R. Buddhist scholar Louis de la Vallée-Poussin wrote, quote, "At first, the Buddhas alone had three bodies. Afterwards, the whole universe was looked upon as residing in or made of the bodies." End quote. According to the Shambhala Dictionary of Buddhism and Zen, quote, "In Zen, the three bodies of Buddha are three levels of reality, which stand in reciprocal relationship to each other and constitute a whole. Dharmakaya is the cosmic consciousness, the unified existence that lies beyond all concepts. This is a substrate characterized by completion and perfection, out of which all animate and inanimate forms as well as the moral order arise. The Sambhogakaya is the experience of the ecstasy of enlightenment, of the Dharma mind of the Buddhas and patriarchs, and of the spiritual practice transmitted by them. The Nirmanakaya is the radiant, transformed Buddha body personified by Shakyamuni Buddha." End quote. The online magazine Lion's Roar offers a few additional things to these definitions that I appreciate. It says, quote, "The three bodies or kayas of the Buddhas are different manifestations of enlightened mind, and they are also the true nature of all sentient beings. The Dharmakaya is without form, substance, or concept of any sort, including existence and non-existence. As it says in one Vajrayana chant, it is nothing whatever, but everything arises from it. The Sambhogakaya is the bridge between the formless and the material, the realm of what Thinley Norbu Rinpoche called non-material spiritual reality. Nirmanakaya is Buddha's appearing in physical form out of compassion and Buddhas can manifest in any physical form, not simply as spiritual teachers, in response to what beings need." End quote. The Trikaya in our direct experience. All right, so getting around to Zen, the 9th century Chan master Linji or Rinzai has this refreshing things to say about the 3 bodies of Buddha. Quote, "The pure light of your heart at this instant is the Dharmakaya Buddha in your own house. The non-differentiating light of your heart at this instant is the Sambhogakaya Buddha in your own house. The non-discriminating light of your own heart at this instant is the Nirmanakaya Buddha in your own house. This trinity of the Buddha's body is none other than he here before your eyes, listening to my expounding of the Dharma. You can come to this seeing only by not running and searching outside. The scholars of the sutras and treatises take the 3 bodies as absolute. As I see it, this is not so. These 3 bodies are merely names or props." End quote. When Linji talks about your own house, he means your very body and mind. From the Zen point of view, the essence of this teaching is what it points you toward in your own direct experience. All teachings are tools, merely names or props for helping you awaken. No matter how complex or transcendent or profound a teaching appears, it is simply one approach to describing reality with a capital R, or a way for you to awaken to or align with it. We can't capture the essence of even one sunset, no matter how many photos we take, paintings we make, or poems we write. Reality is boundless and ungraspable. And yet, we manage to convey certain aspects of our experience to one another. What then is the Trikaya teaching pointing to? It's no easy thing to explain. It feels very bold even to try, and my explanation will inevitably be inadequate. But here goes. There are 3 aspects of the Trikaya teaching to unpack. First, what's the big deal about Buddhas and how they manifest? Second, why are we talking about bodies when at least one aspect of the Trikaya has no form at all? And third, how is this teaching useful? What's the big deal about Buddhas? Starting with the Buddha question. So let's first start by saying we're not talking about supernatural beings who reside in some formless realm and magically project themselves into physical forms, Nirmanakaya, when they want to teach ordinary beings, and appear as immaterial emanations, Sambhogakaya, when they want to impress advanced bodhisattvas. I have no reason to believe this happens, but neither can I prove it doesn't. It just doesn't matter to our understanding of the Trikaya. A Buddha is someone who awakens to reality and is thereby liberated from delusion and suffering. This naturally unlocks their compassion, and they spend their time benefiting others, particularly by teaching and helping them awaken as well. But what is Buddha in our direct experience? We should drop even thinking about awakened people in the abstract. What is awakening? How is it even possible? If you are lost in delusion and bound by conditioning, who or what wakes you up? You think it is I, but upon careful examination, that I can't be found. When we calm the mind and truly let go, we realize this waking up business is part of a process much larger than our self-centered agenda, much larger than our body-mind, much larger than Buddhism itself. Something is unfolding and awakening itself. The Trikaya teaching is a description of this mysterious awakening process. In other words, how awakened beings manifest in the world. What's the big deal about bodies? Next, why are we talking about bodies? Usually, when we speak of bodies, we mean discrete physical manifestations that move. Animate living beings have bodies. We also refer to celestial objects like planets as bodies as they move in their orbits. Now, Nirmanakaya is the manifestation of awakening beings in physical forms. So it makes sense that this is a type of body. What about Dharmakaya and Sambhogakaya? This is perhaps the most difficult aspect of the Trikaya teaching to understand. But it's also what makes the teaching special. What differentiates it from the other descriptions of reality, like emptiness and suchness. Even though Dharmakaya is not a thing at all, it's like a vast field from which everything in the universe arises. Without that field, that potentiality, nothing could arise. It's like space, which is similarly not a thing, but without which nothing could manifest. And yet, this is just an analogy. Any label or comparison misleads. Dharmakaya is the ineffable, the indescribable isness we sense behind and within everything. Although it can't be said either to exist or not exist, still it is not a void. Or, if it is a void, it isn't a negative one. It contains the vast potential of all manifestation, and therefore it is like the mother of all existence. Despite the ineffable nature of the Dharmakaya, we can feel its presence. This, I think, is why it is described as a body. Like physical bodies, it also has a kind of movement or function. Of course, as soon as something comes into being, this is Nirmanakaya. You might think that now that we're talking about physical manifestations, the Trikaya teaching would be straightforward. But it's not that simple. After all, Nirmanakaya isn't just the phenomenal world, it's a body of Buddha. So we're still focused on the process of awakening. In what sense are you and I bodies of Buddha? Without sentient beings, there would be no Buddhas. Without beings who need to awaken, without something to awaken to, there would be no awakening. You might say we're the raw materials of awakening, our very existence pointing to the Dharmakaya. I found an article online by one of Chogyam Trungpa's students that described a lecture Trungpa gave on the Trikaya. Apparently it wasn't very long. John Baker writes, quote, "There is another subtler way to understand the Trikaya, and it is this understanding that Trungpa Rinpoche taught to us that winter day in 1971. He did it this way. Stepping to the blackboard, he picked up a piece of chalk and drew a rough stick figure of a bird. Then he stepped back and asked, 'What is this a picture of?' Of course, no one wanted to say the obvious, and there was an extended silence until finally some fellow raised his hand and said, "It's a picture of a bird?" Rinpoche replied, "It's a picture of the sky." And in those 6 words, he taught the entire Trikaya. Rinpoche was introducing us to the most profound Buddhist description of reality, as it arises in the only place and time it ever arises, here and now. It is not a metaphysical explanation of reality, it is simply a description of what arises in the moment, now, the only time we ever have. End quote. The reality of a bird can't be separated from the reality of sky, but is completely interdependent with sky. The drawing of a flying bird implies the entirety of the boundless sky around it. Similarly, Nirmanakaya is not separate from Dharmakaya. Every form speaks of emptiness. Emptiness speaks of form. Deluded beings exist only because awakened beings exist. And awakened beings exist only because deluded beings exist. Because the truth is immanent in all things are helping us to awaken. All things are Buddha. Sambhogakaya is where the intimate relationship between Dharmakaya and Nirmanakaya becomes evident. Sambhogakayas manifest the moment we pivot our fixation on a picture of a bird to realizing we are looking at the picture of the sky that includes a bird. And we taste the momentary liberation from our limited ways of perceiving. The Dharmakaya shines through the Nirmanakaya. Sambhogakaya manifests in a moment of perfection while sipping our tea. It lives in the wonderful teachings and teachers which have brought us so much relief and joy, and in acts of pure compassion. Wherever things align to help us wake up, wherever the truth is evident, there is Sambhogakaya. Shunryu Suzuki put it this way, quote, "When we want not just an emotional or romantic observation of Buddha, but more sincerely, deeply, want to accept him as our teacher, it is necessary for us to know why he is Buddha. If we come to this point, we must have a fuller idea than just that of incarnated Buddha, or Shakyamuni Buddha, or Nirmanakaya Buddha. That is, we must know that Buddha is the Sambhogakaya Buddha, and that the Sambhogakaya Buddha is the perfect one, or truth itself. Truth itself, when it is observed by people as a truth, may be a teacher. But even plants and animals, mountains and rivers can be our teachers when we really have eyes to see them. When the idea of the historical Buddha has this kind of background, he will be accepted as our teacher in its true sense." End quote. Even though truth itself isn't a tangible thing, we can perceive and experience its results. Therefore, the Sambhogakaya also has a body of sorts, a presence in our life, something very real. How is the Trikaya teaching useful? So where is the utility in conceiving of the process of awakening as involving 3 Buddha bodies? As with all Buddhist teachings, if you don't find it helpful, you don't need to worry about it. This is just another way to describe reality with a capital R, emphasizing a particular aspect of it. There are many other teachings, and I practiced for 30 years before becoming interested in the Trikaya. The usefulness of the teaching, as I see it, is how it highlights the mystery of awakening and points us far beyond our small self's agenda. Beings arise from the undifferentiated potential and awaken to their true nature, empty and luminous with suchness. Their identity with that undifferentiated potential drives them toward awakening, but it's not just about that which is separate and imperfect disappearing back into the void. The original source, the Dharmakaya, puts forth manifestations as if it is its purpose. Describing Dharmakaya, in particular as a body, points toward our human experience as we approach the ineffable. We refrain as much as possible from confusing ourselves with labels and descriptions, and yet it is not enough for the human heart to think only in negative terms. In his article, The Trikaya Doctrine in Buddhism, Ruben Habito suggests that the Dharmakaya came to be seen as a sort of personal absolute, capital P and capital A. He explains, quote, "Thus, in the notion of Dharmakaya, we can see the merging of the traditions regarding the Buddhist absolute as impersonal, formless emptiness on one hand, and as personal, possessed of wondrous attributes, and in constant dynamic activity towards the enlightenment and salvation of all living beings on the other." End quote. You might say that Dharmakaya is as close as Buddhists get to a god. And to continue with a theistic comparison, Nirmanakaya is our way of acknowledging we're God's creation, and Sambhogakaya is the manifestation of God's love and concern for us. But these analogies carry a lot of implications that don't apply if you take them too seriously. I find them helpful only because I was raised in a Judeo-Christian culture, and theistic concepts in some ways are more familiar to me than Buddhist ones. Personally, I have no sense of a god or Dharmakaya which has any human characteristics whatsoever, such as a comparable but larger consciousness or an agenda or emotions. But at the same time, I also get a powerful sense that neither is the Dharmakaya simply an impersonal void. I appreciate how Buddhism, through the Trikaya, manages to describe and ennoble this complex human experience. So that's it for today. I will be back soon with a new episode. I hope you'll tune in. Thanks for listening.